We've got a note here from the Associated Press saying that 2 U.S. officials are saying that apparently the bombers in Boston were motivated by their religion, but are apparently not tied to Islamic terrorist groups. So that's very interesting information. Now, of course, in Madrid, the bombers there in Europe were motivated by their religious opinion and ideology, but were not heavily tied to Al-Qaeda. In London, they were heavily tied to Al-Qaeda, and they did get direction and guidance from them, of course, when there was the London bombings over there. And so it could have gone either way here, and it still can, because this is just a preliminary report from 2 officials inside the government. But now, again, some liberals were saying, oh, no, the fact that they're Muslim has nothing to do with it. I think that's crazy assumption. Now, it's possible that it doesn't have anything to do with it, but it would be a really low chance. You know, it's when we found out that they were Chechens and Muslims, and it turns out Tamerlan, you can see online, was deeply religious and was very worried about American foreign policy and had very many bad things to say about it. You put 2 and 2 together, you're likely to come out with 4. And Tom Brokaw was actually talking about this recently. Let's go to his clip here.
With the death of Osama bin Laden, Islamic rage did not go away. In fact, in some ways, it's more dangerous. This is a perfect example. He's a Chechen, but their beef is with Russia, not with us. But he's also a Muslim. And the fact is that Islamic rage is still out there.
Look, that's a reality, and there is that rage, and perhaps, you know, we could be aware of it, and obviously that's relevant. Of course, then now Fox News had a so-called expert on, who then went on to say that, oh, this is radical Islamism, it is a poison, and it's political correctness to avoid that poison and not to talk about it, etc. But here we are talking about it, but we also have to have reasonable reactions to it, because, for example, if we overreact and we invade the wrong country, as we did after 9/11, Afghanistan made sense, at least in the beginning, and then we invaded Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11, well, that obviously contributed to Muslim rage. Now, look, a lot of jingoistic Americans will say, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it's easy for you to say, but you have to understand that Iraqis have been dealing with these kind of bombings for the last 10 years, over and over again. Just right after the Boston bombings, or right in that same area, there was huge bombings in Iraq that killed not 3, but 32. And it's been a decade of that. Now, if you think it's unreasonable for some Muslims or some Iraqis to be concerned about that, to maybe even be enraged about that, well, that's ridiculous. You know, the whole idea of Joe Scarborough saying they hate us because they hate us. Or maybe they hate us because we invaded the wrong Muslim country and devastated it. And hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians were killed. Now, does that justify what these brothers did? Of course not. Of course not. And, you know, I talked about this immediately after we found out who they were. I mean, you had an 8-year-old boy who was killed. What did he have to do with American foreign policy? You had a Chinese national that was killed. What did she have to do with American foreign policy? Apparently, during the chase, they let one of the guys that they had taken basically hostage and carjacked go, because the 2 brothers said, well, we don't want to kill you because you're not an American. Well, you idiots, you killed a Chinese national. She wasn't an American. Now, it doesn't make it any better when you kill an American, but it goes to show you terrorism is always stupid. And by the way, Muslim terrorists, who do they kill the most? Other Muslims. Who do you think's in Iraq, right? Let alone Afghanistan and all the other bombings in all those other countries. So that's why terrorism is always unjustifiable. So as you look at this, though, there is a legitimate question as to how we react so that we don't get more rage and more terrorism against us. And Brokaw also mentioned that. Watch.
What prompts a young man to come to this country and still feel alienated from it, to go back to Russia and do whatever he did? And I think we also have to examine the use of drones that the United States is involved in. And there are a lot of civilians who are innocently killed in a drone attack in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, and in Iraq. And there is this enormous rage against what they see in that part of the world as a presumptionist of the United States.
And that is the reality. The fact is, presumptuousness is a nice way of saying it, but what he's getting at is whether it's Afghanistan, Yemen, Pakistan, you name it, Muslims think, okay, you get to come here and violate our borders and do drone strikes on us all you like, and they know about the drone strikes a hell of a lot better than we do, because they know that some of them are signature strikes and land on top of kids, land on top of weddings. A signature strike is a strike we do, and we know we do, and we admit we do through the leaks that given to the New York Times, etc., where we don't know who we're bombing. We don't know who they are, but we drop the bomb anyway because we think there might be a signature activity like weapons. I got news for you. For example, Yemen has the second most amount of weapons per capita anywhere in the world. Of course there's weapons down there. By the way, who's number one in most weapons in the world? You got it, the United States of America. Under that standard, if another country was doing what we did, there'd be signature strikes all across the country. Texas would be devastated. They'd say, what? There was weapons down there. We also do double taps, where we hit a group, whether they're somebody we know or don't know is a terrorist, and then when first responders come, we hit them. Well, that's a war crime, right? So are people in a rage over that? If you live in that area, wouldn't you be in a rage? Again, it doesn't justify terrorism. Terrorism is stupid, immoral, any way you slice it. Like, if you're so angry about that and you want to do that back to the U.S., how does that make sense? Well, oh, you're so deeply immoral, I'm going to do the same thing you did. Even if you believe that logic, right? Now, that doesn't make sense. But you can understand where that rage comes from. So my overall point is, hey, perhaps we should stop doing things that are unjust and counterproductive. Why create a rage when it doesn't get us the terrorists we want anyway? You know the drone strikes, what percentage hit high-level al-Qaeda militants? 2%. And does it create perhaps even Muslims in this country to get so angry that they do bombings? Maybe. Now, again, for the 18th time, it doesn't justify it, and they should bring the weight of justice on this guy, right? But at the same time, why are we doing something that continues this cycle of senseless violence?